Alright guys, welcome to another video from XF Motorsports. Today we have a super clean E55 in the shop. This is actually a car that came in a few months back, but I didn't do a video on it that time because it didn't need something too significant. But this time though, it's in for a few mods, which are actually extremely common mods on these cars. A bigger heat exchanger from VRP, water pump for the intercooler, and well, also I'm going to be replacing the voltage regulator on it. And one really weird request for this car is that the child seat button on the rear seat is broken, and the customer wants me to put a new one in. And putting a new one in is actually not as easy as it seems. The whole rear seats need to come out. The leather actually needs to come off the seat just to put this one little button in place and put everything back together then. But that's the only thing that's broken on this car's interior. It's in such perfect condition that everything else is literally perfect on it. So, but first let's start off with the fun part, installing the heat exchanger and yeah, all the bigger things. So before getting into installing the parts, let me just show you this car, because every time this comes in I'm actually blown away by how clean this car is. Like, not a single scratch or swirl mark or anything on the paint. There's just this little bit of clear protection that's peeling off on a few places, but that's just a clear protection. Once it comes off, the paint underneath is literally perfect. And looking inside the car, actually, that's even more surprising than the exterior, because the interior is like absolutely new. It looks like it left the dealership like 2 days ago or something. Usually on these wooden trims and stuff, you see them getting cracked or something over time, and even the leather starts to get cracks on it. But this car, it seems like time has had no effect on it at all. It's like everything is just perfect on it. Here's a look at the back seats and everything, and yeah, they're also perfect. And of course, the only defect on the interior is just this little button that's broken off. That's literally the only thing that's broken. Here's a look inside the engine bay, and again, extremely clean. Last time the car was in, I was looking at all the fluids and everything else, and yeah, all the fluids were perfectly clean. Only the supercharger fluid was not replaced, which I also replaced last time. So yeah, everything is just super clean on this one. So yeah, next it's time to start by changing a few things on it. I'm going to start off by installing the VRP heat exchanger, which involves taking the front bumper off, and I'll have to be extremely careful with this one because I would regret to be the first person to put a scratch on this car. So removing the bumper on this car is a bit of a long job. First the wheels need to come off, then the fender liners need to come off. After that there's a plastic panel underneath the bumper that needs to come off. And after that there's a few electrical connectors going to the parking sensors, side marker lamps, fog lamps, and also a temperature sensor that sits on the bumper. Once all that is removed, then there's a few fasteners holding the bumper in place, and once they're all removed, then finally the bumper can come off. Here's a look at the heat exchanger after the bumper is removed, and yeah, it's a little bent from all the stones and stuff over time, and it's a little clogged up too from a few places, but that's okay because we're going to be replacing it anyways. So for replacing the heat exchanger, or removing the heat exchanger, there's just a few plastic clips that are holding it in place, and I believe you have to unbolt this one too. I don't remember everything exactly because I did this a while back, but nonetheless, it's not too difficult at this point. And I'm also going to be removing the water pump as well along with it. So yeah, for the water pump, just these two hoses that need to be come off, and this electrical connector, this breather hose at the back, and only one 10mm nut holding this in place. So even that's pretty easy at this point. Just a little bit of coolant I have to drain out when I remove one of these hoses. This car actually does have the better oil cooler design, so I believe it was in the years before '04 where you only had one oil cooler over here. But in the years after '04, there's two of them. There's this little oil cooler over here as well that provides a little bit of extra oil cooling. And oil temperatures is the other thing in this car that does get hot if you ever track these cars, if you ever take them on a racetrack. But I believe for street use, even the older one does work out fine. The only time it gives you trouble is when you're actually driving the car really hard. Here's a look at the intercooler heat exchanger after it's removed from the car, and a quick side-by-side comparison with the new one that is going to be going on. So, well, the most obvious difference when you look at them is that this newer VRP one is a bar and plate design versus the original one, which is a pipe and tube and fin design, I believe it's called. So this one apparently does the better job of cooling, and it's also a little thicker and a little higher than the factory one, so that is of course also going to improve cooling. It does go on a little bit differently than the stock one does, because the stock one just clips on to these well, these plastic things clip into the factory radiator, but this newer one has these two bolting points at the top that get bolted to that front crash aluminum thing. There are already two bolts there that I just need to undo and bolt this one in, and hopefully it should be a fairly easy install. So yeah, let's try installing this and see how it goes. So after the heat exchanger is installed and all looking proper, next it's time to move to the alternator, the voltage regulator for the alternator. So this is the voltage regulator that I'm going to be installing in it. This basically regulates the voltage from the alternator, and the reason people replace it is because sometimes when they get old, they do fail, and then the car doesn't charge the battery anymore, and then it can die in the middle of the road. So this person of course wants to replace it even before it starts giving any trouble. So the voltage regulator sits right behind the alternator over there. Before attempting to remove it, just make sure you disconnect the negative terminal of your battery, because that wire over there always has 12 volts. So of course you want to make sure that the battery is disconnected, because if that touches anything on your chassis while it has voltage in it, it's going to cause a massive short circuit. After that's removed and a few other things are removed on the alternator, there's just two Phillips screws that hold this thing to the alternator, and I really want to make sure I don't strip those screws while removing them, because they are extremely tight and difficult to remove, and if they strip, then sometimes the only option is to drill those screws out, and that involves taking the entire alternator out. So yeah, I really hope this one turns out easy and those screws come off easy. Removing the voltage regulator while the alternator is still inside the car is a bit of a painful job, just because it's a really tight space, and these Phillips screws are ridiculously tight. So in this car it's still possible, but I think in other models like the CL or the S-Class it might be completely impossible, because on those cars the space is even less than what it is in this car. So, but nonetheless, with a bit of effort I was able to remove the old voltage regulator and put the new one in, so it all went fine. So now that everything with the alternator is done and the voltage regulator is replaced, next it's time to get to the boring part. I have to do a quick oil change on this car and fix the only oil leak that the car had. So well, yeah, last time it came in, the valve cover gaskets were leaking on it, and I replaced those, and there was a little bit of oil over here that I couldn't figure out where it was coming from, but later I figured out it was from the oil dipstick tube o-ring that goes right over here. So it's a really minor leak, and since I cleaned everything last time, there's only this little bit of oil that has come over here, so that's like nothing compared to what other E55s usually have, because on most E55s you'll see a whole puddle of oil over here from the rear main seal, quite a bit of oil at the front from the oil filter housing and stuff, and yeah, just a whole bunch of leaks that this engine is known for. But this one is amazing. There's almost like no leaks at all on this engine, so that's pretty good. So after this part, I didn't film too much because the next day was pretty busy. There were a few cars that had to come in, so I really had to do everything quickly and get this car off the lift. Okay, apologize, I did not get to film everything with the E55. I've already put everything back together, so after that part I did the oil change, checked the oil level, and I had to get this car off the lift really quick because there was another car that had to go on the lift. Not this car, there was another X6 that came in for lowering springs and a few other things, so I had to clear the lift really quickly. But anyways, now the last thing left on the E55 is I have to change that little seat button on it, which is also going to be a bit of an interesting repair, because just to change that little seat button, the whole seat has to come out, and the leather on this part of the seat has to come off, and then you put that little button on and then put everything back together. So it is an awful lot of work for one small thing. But anyways, taking the seat off this car is if you look over here, there's this little thing where you can put your finger in, and if you push on it and then you pull it up, it releases the bottom part of the seat. Same on the other side. When you do that, this lower part of the seat will come out. You can push it forward and then take it out. After that, there's a few bolts somewhere over here on the seat that you have to remove, and then once they're removed, this upper part of the seat, you can push it upwards and take that out, and that comes off as well. And after that, I will get to removing that little button over there. So now finally all the work is done on the Cleanest E55, and that means there's only one last thing left to do, to take it out for a bit of a test drive and make sure that everything is normal. Well, the only thing that I really need to check is how much the coolant level drops after it circulates in the intercooler, because it's not going to circulate into the intercooler until the pump turns on. So yeah, I'm gonna have to drive it a bit. So test driving the E55, and well, the only thing I can say about this car is that you always hear these bad things about E55s, that they're unreliable cars, they're always breaking down, and there's always something wrong with an E55. This is an E55 that the person has literally been telling me inspect everything on it, and if anything needs to be replaced, just replace it on it. And I'm at the point where I can't even find anything wrong with this car anymore. Literally everything is perfect. The suspension, there's no clunkiness in it. drives perfectly quiet, really smooth, just like a new car would drive when you take it for a test drive, like from the dealership. So it's amazing to see in a car with 133,000 kilometers, by the way, and like 12 years old, and more than 12 years old actually, and the car still feels like new. It's something that feels like it just left the dealership 2 days ago or something. So that's amazing that whoever took care of this car and kept it all these years has done an amazing job, and really shows that if you take care of these cars, they can last a really long time. So that is going to be everything for the E55. Did the VRP heat exchanger make a big difference? Well, to be honest, to feel a big difference, I would need to push the car a little more, but I know for a fact that these heat exchangers make a big difference, because even on my own E55, I was running 2 heat exchangers in order to keep the intake air temperatures cool enough while I was using it for track use. But yeah, for sure, the factory heat exchanger and everything on this car is way too small. So this is actually one of those mods that will help your car stay more reliable rather than just giving you more power and destroying your car faster. So definitely recommend this mod. Also, if you're having any trouble with your AMGs, the place is XF Motorsports. We also provide machining services, like if you want to open up the snout on your supercharger for running a bigger throttle body, or actually even there was an E63 recently that we machined cam adjusters on. So yeah, any machining or any help with these AMGs, I love working on these cars, especially clean ones like these. So yeah, I'll link the website down below. If you guys need any help, definitely let me know. And that's going to be everything for this video. Other than this, in the next few videos you guys are going to be seeing, well, some more progress on this car. First of all, this is the E55 that we are manual swapping, putting in a transmission from a 350Z in this car, and it's getting really close to the point where I'm just about to, well, drop the automatic transmission out of it and start putting in the 350Z transmission and figuring out a whole bunch of stuff along the way. Other than that, this car is also getting ready for its first time attack, well, not its second time attack, but the last time attack of the year that it's going to get to go on, because, well, yeah, one thing about this shop has been that I haven't found an awful lot of time for this car. Now, hopefully, as things get a little more quieter towards winter, I will be spending more time on this car, making all the body work for it, doing all the things that I still needed to do on it, and also hopefully finding time for a whole bunch of upgrades on it so that I can improve the car for next year. But yeah, next weekend actually this car will be heading to the track again, and you guys will see a video from that. So yeah, that's going to be everything for now. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.